What are the pros and cons of censorship in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic? Find out here today on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for today's episode. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content, but you got to go follow me over on Instagram. I am at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live. We do go live 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, so make sure you're here right on time. I try to be on time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so thank you all for being here today. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page, where I see Tracy just popped in. Hello, you guys. Thanks for being here. And finally, over on my YouTube channel, thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay. We do have the replay here on IGTV. As soon as it's over, go check it out. We also put all the past episodes up over on YouTube. Just type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. We also have some bonus episodes, by the way, over on YouTube. On Wednesdays, we always air the video, the YouTube video of the interview for the Livin' La Vida Low Carb show on Wednesdays. And so today is Wednesday. I've got a wonderful Jimmy Rants bonus episode that you can watch over on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/livinglowcarbman. And it's with Rebecca Farmer. And she has had in her past over 10 autoimmune conditions, C. diff, Lyme disease. She's had just everything you can imagine in her health go wrong. And she was able to cure it with nutrition and the epigenetic expression. So go listen to that. Watch it, the interview on the Jimmy Rants bonus episode here today over at my YouTube channel. And then finally, pop on over to jimmyrants.com. It's the official website for this show. And while you're there, you can see all the past episodes, but you can actually support what we do here. I don't really peddle any products here. I'm just me, and I'm just sharing information. So if you get value out of what you see here, click on the Patreon link or the PayPal link, and a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. Okay, you guys, today I want to talk about something that's the grand boogeyman that's going on out there, whether we want to admit it or not. We have real censorship happening in the United States of America. In my lifetime, I never would have imagined that voices of dissent, voices that run counter to what a mainstream, primary narrative would be, I never thought voices of dissent would ever be silenced. One of the hallmarks of our country is we have this thing called the First Amendment, where you have the freedom of speech. And freedom of speech lets you pretty much say anything, except you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire. That's a no-go. You can't really have pornography be speech. You can't really have like hate speech and derogatory language that's hateful language that could incite violence towards people. So there's obvious kind of restrictions. But right now, the censorship that is happening is simply because people have a differing opinion than the mainstream opinion that's out there. In the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, we have direct censorship happening. Now, whether you knew that or not, it's real. I'm going to tell you, I've experienced it personally where things have been taken down. They do it very covertly. They just do it very quickly, and they're gone. Like if you go on YouTube, there's all kinds of things that are being taken off, and even YouTube admitted, the CEO of YouTube admitted a few months back that, oh yeah, if you say anything that runs counter to what the World Health Organization calls for when it comes to COVID-19, then we're going to take it down. So people that were like, hey, boost your immunity by taking a vitamin C supplement, taken down. Hey, get out in the sunshine and it will make your immune system strong enough that you won't need a vaccine, taken down. And now, I believe it was yesterday, the movie, the documentary film that's been all the hype the last few months called Plandemic, it actually released yesterday on London Real. And when they tried to put it up, people were trying to put links to it on Facebook, for example. Facebook not only took it down, but banned those people from Facebook. So people talking about I'm in Facebook jail. They kind of like locked me out for a period of time. These kinds of things are happening. And so what I want to talk about here today, and if you're just joining us, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of what internet censorship means in the era of the coronavirus. Because never in a million years growing up did I think we would get to the point where we would have censorship happening. But it's here. And I saw somebody the other day online said censorship online is the equivalent of book burning. You're just trying to get rid of voices that you don't want anymore. But that's not the way a free society works. A free society, a thinking society. I want to underscore this one. When you're thinking and when you're able to reason as human beings are wired to do, and you don't have all the information, good, bad, and ugly, about those topics that you're thinking about, can you make a rational decision? No, of course you can't. So when you start banning and censoring things just because it runs counter to what the mainstream narrative is, are you actually learning and reasoning and thinking things through, or are you becoming indoctrinated? Now, of course, some people, well, that's kind of pie in the sky. What are you talking about, indoctrinated? Think about it. If all you ever hear is one version of things, where does your mind go? It goes to that one version of things. Think about what the one version of things we've heard has been when it comes to the coronavirus. Wear a mask. Socially distance 6 feet. Stay at home. Wash your hands. We're all in this together. Those are all words that have been the primary message regarding the coronavirus. And wait for the vaccine. All the primary messages of the coronavirus. Have you heard anybody say, take vitamin D, get sunshine, breathe in fresh air, eat real food, cut out the junk food, move your body? Have we heard anything like that? No, because it's not a part of the mainstream narrative. But if all people are hearing is one narrative, guess what? They're going to regurgitate that one narrative. And so we're going to talk about what are the ramifications, good and bad, that come from censorship of things online, and especially here in the era of COVID-19. So I've got a few stories here. This first one is from futureofworking.com. 19 of the biggest pros and cons of censorship. So censorship is defined as the suppression of ideas, images, or words that some people find to be offensive in some way. Can I tell you this? You do not have a right to not be offended. I know that is not politically correct to say in 2020, but you're gonna get offended if you're online. Can we just admit that you're going to scroll past something on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. You're going to see something somewhere that's going to offend you. It's just a part of life, guys. Like this whole notion of, well, we're not allowed to have things that would offend people. If that was true, nothing would ever go up, right? I scroll past things every day that I go, oh my God, ugh. That, yeah, they're not my thing. And I don't agree with, but you know what I do? I do this magical thing called scroll on by. I can't tell you how many times I have posted things on social media, on my page here on Facebook, and somebody will say, well, I don't think you need to be putting that here. I'm like, if you don't like it, if it's not your cup of tea, scroll on by. But people get their panties in a wad, and they're offended. And I'm like, it is not my job to not offend you. In fact, I want to be challenged on what I believe. And this is part of the censorship conversation that nobody's talking about. You don't know what you believe in your heart of hearts until you're actually shaken to the core of that belief. Like, think about if somebody challenges your belief and you're kind of like shaking a little bit, then maybe your belief's not totally what you truly believe, and you can alter that belief, right? And then in the case of the censorship, think about all of the things that have gone online and then have now been pulled down and censored from the internet. Let's take those doctors a few weeks back that met on the steps of the Supreme Court talking about hydroxychloroquine. So let's talk about them. They took that down lickety split. So when you do that, and I've got some things in here about what psychologically that does to people, it actually does the flip side of what they think it is. They think by taking it down, it makes people not see it. No, it makes them want to see it more. Psychologically, people are like, oh, what they take down? What is that? But from a psychological perspective, they're going to wonder what in the world's going on. So when you take it down, guess what you remove? You remove the ability to retort. Like, think about if they disagree with what's in whatever they decided to censor, if they simply disagree with it, how easy would it be to leave it up and then say, okay, watch this, and here's the tit for tat, tit for tat, tit for tat, all the reasons why it's wrong. Okay? That's called having a debate of ideas. That's called putting it out there, letting people make the choice. So when they take it down, they're not interested in having a debate of ideas. They're only interested in controlling the message they want you to hear. Okay? So censorship's got some good and bad things, which we'll get into here in a second. But offending you is not enough to take it down, because something's going to offend everybody. It happens whenever there's a personal, moral, or political value from one group that gets placed onto another in some way. Although it is often viewed through the lens of government policies, this process can be carried out by literally anyone, private groups, religious organizations, even in the schools. It must be mentioned that a private group or individual can organize boycotts, demonstrate in protest, and take other actions that are defined as free speech. When taken to the extreme, even rights protected by the First Amendment can be dangerous. There was the ACLU has noted that the Hollywood blacklist during the McCarthy era were from private pressure groups and not the government. So this can definitely happen. What is unique about American society is the amount of ambivalence towards censorship. Even the 1996 Communications Decency Act in the United States is a form of it, even if the intentions are good from the point of view of the majority. Like, a lot of people in America don't realize that censorship is a normal thing in a country like China, for example. You want to know what real heavy-duty censorship looks like? Just try living in China. Try being a journalist in China. I have read many stories of people that have gotten out of China, and they told the story of how they were told, this is what you're allowed to write, this is what you can say, you can't talk bad about the government, you can't say this, can't do. They are censored galore. Whereas we have a lot more freedoms here in America with our constitutional rights to free speech. But 2020 is pushing that boundary. So let's take a look at some of the pros and cons about censorship when it becomes permissible to restrict actions, words, and thoughts. It can create opportunities to target other groups. So let's look at this. What are the pros of censoring information? Censorship can reduce the impact of hate speech in society. The idea that all speech is created equal is just arguably false. There are words that people use as an effort to shut down the right to speak of others. It took over a century for minorities and women to gain a semblance of equal rights because of hate speech. Even if it's clothed in the ideas of religious freedom, states' rights, patriotism, it doesn't change what it is to others. Censorship gives us the opportunity to stop this hate before it starts. So I agree, hate speech has no place on the internet. We need to at least be mindful of what that hate speech is doing. Maybe it incites other people to engage in what I like to call Me Tooism, because I get that when somebody calls me fat in a comment, then somebody else comes like, yeah, I've always wondered why that Jimmy Moore guy's so fat. Yeah, and then it just becomes this cascade. So you end that pretty quick. But speech in and of itself is not hate. Hate is hate, okay? Number 2, pros of censorship. Censorship can protect children from unhealthy content. Parents have plenty of work to do in today's society to protect their children from unhealthy influences. There's content everywhere that even slips through the filters that could be harmful. Children have fewer qualms about talking with strangers online than adults do because of the way they see the world. They have more innocence, curiosity, and might even be shy and lonely. Censorship allows us to cut through the ignoring of potential threats, so a child's inexperience and lack of foresight doesn't get them in trouble. But by stopping people before they act or before a child can respond, we can keep everyone safer because of certain restrictions. So this one's a tricky one for me, because I agree, children need to be protected, especially in this era where we have 20 million people currently in human trafficking, 2 million of which are children. Many of those are put into sex trafficking, and this has been a big story in 2020 as well, of we're uncovering this underground kind of sordid tale of child sex trafficking that's happening around the world. And so creating an environment online for kids not to be exposed to that, I suppose you could say on surface value, that makes sense. You don't want these predators to be able to have access to these kids. But see, here's the thing. How do you shut that down other than take away the devices from the kids, which ain't gonna fly? I don't know. Like, I think that's just where parents need to step up and be a lot more vigilant about what their kids are doing. There are so many apps and ways to keep tabs on your kids these days and the devices they have, that having someone censor information, I don't know that that's the answer. I don't know that that's a pro just for the protection of children. Now, you're going to have parents that don't give a rip, and those are the parents that should have never been parents. Just going to leave that right there. But it's not the job of whoever the purveyors of internet information are to censor that information just because a kid could get access to it. Trust me, if it's online, kids will find it. They will. Kids are very adept at this, and so let's don't pretend like we can censor it just to protect children. Number 3 pro, censorship can reduce the amount of conflict that's in society. Are you kidding me? So a lot of the discussion about the censorship that's been happening this year is surrounding things that are making conflict in society. What are they talking about? Can reduce the amount of conflict in society. If you look on the internet long enough, there's something that offends someone, anyone. The goal of censorship isn't to eliminate access to anything that somebody might be finding problematic. We wouldn't get to go online if that was the case. What we can do with this process is to limit access to information that could have an adverse impact on the overall culture of our homes, communities, or countries. Netflix and Saudi Arabia work together to create targeted areas of censorship based on this principle. Whether you agree or disagree with the practice, this work removes access to content that might be disruptive to society. No. There are so many things that are allowed to be online that are not censored that I think cause great disruption to society. Let's stop pretending like there's some special category of things that could disrupt society. I think it's the things they don't show us online, and by not showing us those things online, that causes greater disruption in society than anything they would show. Now, I don't know, are they talking about a gruesome murder that happens? But again, those happen online all the time. People go on TikTok, people go on an Instagram Live, people go on YouTube, and they're doing a live, somebody's killing themselves live. That's a thing, people doing it. So, like, I mean, are we just going to get to the point where we select what is going to impact society and what's not? Whether they like it or not, what we see on a daily basis and all these images and all the things we see and read and hear, all of those things are impacting our culture. They are. Number 4, again, the pros of censorship. Censorship can provide another level of security to a country's profile. We also use censorship to limit the amount of information that the general public receives from the government, business, and institutions. Without this, top secret files can be made public with a simple request. Proprietary ingredients wouldn't be available because of the need for disclosure. By limiting certain types of data from the primary flow of society, there's less potential for harm. Okay, if there's a legality aspect to it, like protection of government secrets, business secrets and things because they're proprietary things done in the course of business, okay, fine. Fine, I agree with that. That's probably a good idea. People don't have the right to know the formula for Coca-Cola, for example. They don't. That's been their trade secret for well over 100 years. Number 5, censorship protects the rights of artists, innovators, and inventors. Again, copyright laws are a form of censorship. It prevents plagiarism and IP theft, and it just protects small businesses. So that's good. Number 6, censorship provides us with a vehicle to stop false content. There are censorship laws in place that prevent businesses from lying to you about their products. Advertisements must be a direct reflection of what you expect when you make a purchase. Failing to be honest can result in fines and penalties. Without this advantage, businesses could say or do anything in an attempt to get you to buy their stuff. You can avoid the risk of false pretense thanks to the protections from this advantage. So, censorship provides us with a vehicle to stop false content. Who gets to define what's true and what's false? There are many products out there that make claims that just aren't true about their product. Or it's an exaggeration of a perceived claim that then they make it look like it's a solid claim of benefit or whatever, even in like the supplement space, or even like breakfast cereal, for example. They'll put a claim, an excellent source of vitamin D on the front of the box of Fruit Loops, okay? And then you look in the side panel and it's not an excellent source of vitamin D, but they just made a big old claim on the front of it that it was. These are the kinds of things that they want to stop the false content. Number 7, censorship can work to improve a person's knowledge. So let me get this straight. If you take something away that improves people's knowledge, like the last time I checked, knowledge is built on lots and lots of information that you process, good, bad, and ugly about anything. That's how you get knowledge. Let's see what they say about this. People tend to believe what they see when they're consuming media and the various forms of content that are available. By removing items that would create a panic from the public view, government and law enforcement officials can provide better protection, reduce the spread of rumors, encourage individuals to review the information they see before coming to a conclusion. People can use this technique to promote the flow of negative data to create a specific result, but this process is also useful for the times when you want to create a positive one as well. I have a problem with this one because removing items that would create a panic from the public view, you know what you do when you remove items and you censor things online? You know what you're directly doing? You're creating panic. You're creating curiosity. You're creating skepticism. You're telling the general public, oh, no, 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 no. You're not allowed to see that thing, which makes you wonder, what are they not wanting you to see? Can you see how removal of stuff online, which has happened in droves this year, how that actually makes people more panicked and more nervous and more, what are they hiding from us, right? I don't agree with it improves your knowledge. No, no, no. It takes away from the knowledge base because you lose a data point with whatever this video content, this thing that you read, this audio, whatever it is that got removed. You don't have that knowledge that's in there. Now, here's the thing. When you're trying to control people and not have them hear things that you know run counter to what you believe and that it makes a good point, you want to remove those things when you're trying to control that. And that's what a lot of people are arguing right now is happening, is they want to control what you see and hear. Hydroxychloroquine is a perfect example. So there's been a lot of really good studies coming out showing hydroxychloroquine is fine. There's big countries that have done very well. Singapore, for example, I read yesterday, they've taken a bunch of the population has taken hydroxychloroquine, and they have next to no cases of COVID-19. And so they don't want you to hear that information. They don't want you to see that information, because the narrative is that hydroxychloroquine is dangerous and that you can't get benefit from it. So let's move on. And I've done other Jimmy rants about that specific one before. And so that's an example of how they're removing one aspect of the knowledge base, and they're only telling you hydroxychloroquine is dangerous. So what is your knowledge? How is your knowledge going to be improved on that if you don't get all of the sides from both sides, and then you come to what you think is the logical conclusion? Number 8, censorship can limit the impact of identity theft. So they censor certain things, so people that would be nefarious with your information can't get access to it. So that one's obvious. Number 9, censorship helped to create our rating system. So there's ratings for movies, video games, music. Until 1984, films went from PG to R, which eventually led to PG-13. Ratings on music allow us to see if lyrics are explicit. So yeah, so again, those are obvious points. But let's get to the list of cons when it comes to censorship. You ready for this? Cons of censorship. Number 1, it represses one group of people in favor for what the majority wants. And I would argue not necessarily for what the majority wants, but for what the people in power that are pulling the strings of the censorship want. I don't for a minute believe the vast majority of the American people don't want to see everything that comes out. I just don't believe it. I think people want to see everything, and then let people choose what they want to believe after seeing everything. Like, what are they trying to hide? A museum director was once arrested because sexually explicit photographs from a famous artist were included in an art exhibited that was being managed. Although the artist's work displays images, often black and white, that featured nudity and a certain amount of suggestiveness, it was far from violent or suggestive that would encourage lawlessness. Under the laws of the U.S., it would be fair to say that the country is the most speech-protective nation in the world. When it comes to sexual speech, things are different because there's still remnants of the Puritan heritage in the law. Even the Supreme Court has affirmed that censorship on moral grounds is permissible. So, represses one group of people in favor of what the majority wants. Do the majority get to decide what we get to see and not see? You know, what if in that minority opinion, what if in that dissenting opinion that runs counter to what the mainstream narrative is, what if there's an element of truth in there that needs to be heard? And if you squelch that out altogether, how are you supposed to ever hear that message? How are you ever supposed to come to that knowledge and understanding unless you're exposed to it? So this is why censorship on the internet is not a good idea. Let everything out there, and then let the chips fall where they may based on what people conclude. Number 2 con of censorship, it allows people to create a specific narrative in society to call it the truth. Oh my gosh, are we living in that in 2020 or what? 2020 has basically been, here's what's happening, now believe it. Have you felt that way? Here is exactly what's going on, you guys. Now it's time for you to believe it. The problem is that's not how human beings work. The problem is rational thinking people, they hear a side of an issue, for example, but then they want to think it through a little bit and go, well, what's the counter to that argument? Like, it's one thing to have an argument, but you want an argument and a counter argument and maybe an alter argument in the middle of the two, and you consider all of that along the spectrum of your reasoning skills so you can come up with a conclusion about what makes the most sense to you. And it's just unfortunate that people are falling into lockstep of whatever they're being told, that's it. There's no questioning of it. And I don't think that's rational thinking. It's why you have a divide right now, because there's so many people that are thinkers. I consider myself one of those. A lot of you guys are those as well. And when you're a rational thinker, you don't just buy things at face value. Now, I realize there are a lot of people that are very comfortable just believing whatever they see, whatever they hear, and they just believe it at face value. And they don't even know why they believe it. Like, look at the people that support people on both sides of the political spectrum. When you ask some of those people, why do you believe what you believe? Oh, I just believe. I'm like, no. That doesn't tell me why you believe. You have to examine why you believe. They don't know because they just believe. They go along. That's it. They don't think. And when you're trying to be a thinker, this one right here, allowing people to create a specific narrative just so they could call it the truth. We're seeing that right now like crazy. You'll often hear calls for censorship on violence when they see it on video games, read it in books, or see examples of it in film or TV. The reality of fictional violence is that it does not cause otherwise stable people to suddenly want to hurt someone. If we start suppressing material based on actions of unstable people, then nothing would be safe from the censorship process. The work most often cited by people as a way to justify their harmful actions against others is the Bible itself. Ted Bundy collected cheerleading magazines. If there were a clear cause and effect argument that could be proven, then a limit on expression here could be warranted, but until there is such an example, it is not. Yeah, we like to use all kinds of things to justify wanting to censor things. And I'm all about let it be seen, let it be heard, let it be out there, unless it falls in the category of harming someone, child pornography. Like there's specific things that are, if you look at it from a common sense perspective, obviously you don't want those things to get out there. But removing it just because it disagrees with the mainstream narrative is not one of those. Number 3, cons of censorship. It stops people from pursuing career opportunities. If we live in a world where everything is censored, then it would be a place where nothing would get done without specific permission from someone in charge. And that right there, you guys, is the key. Who is in charge of censoring? Who's the one that's pulling things off? Right now, it's the social media companies. Right now, over on YouTube, if certain things get posted on there, they will get ripped offline very quickly. Here on Instagram, same thing. Certain things get posted, they take it down. I had 1 or 2 things taken down just in the last month on Instagram. They do it all the time. And same on Facebook. Facebook just today, Facebook and Twitter both just today, made the announcement that if you post something about this new pandemic film, which released earlier this week, I believe it released yesterday, if you post about it with a link to go watch it, they will actually not just pull it down, they will pull your entire account down and rip you off the internet. So they're not playing around. Number 4. Cons of censorship. It reduces the overall intelligence of the general public. That's what I was talking about earlier when they were talking about it increases your knowledge. No, it doesn't. It takes away from your knowledge, because knowledge is about having all the angles of everything and coming to a conclusion through your own reasoning. It reduces the overall intelligence of the general public because it requires that the general population be under tight controls so that specific outcomes are achievable. It is an attempt to prevent individuals from discovering what the truth of any situation happens to be. Even an attempt at suggesting the content is fake or untrustworthy is a way to create censorship from an official capacity. It's one thing to have a person say, I don't like watching CNN because I feel like all their news stories are fake. But you get a authority figure to say that they're fake news, and it turns into something that becomes reality for people. So they're claiming in this story that that's a form of censorship as well. And yeah, you reduce the overall intelligence. More information means more data points by which to form a logical opinion. Number 5, con of censorship. It prevents an individual from expressing yourself freely. That is the thing. We live in the United States of America, where the First Amendment very clearly states you cannot violate the free expression of ideas. It's right there. First Amendment. And yet they're doing exactly that. In a no-rules environment that is completely free of censorship, anyone could post anything they want without any fear of reprisal. The United States does walk a fine line along this path by preventing the use of obscene items. And again, I think we all agree from a common sense standpoint, things that are obscene, either from a visual perspective or a written perspective or a audio perspective, get those things off if they're overtly obscene. But even just obscene in and of itself, there's comedians that are pretty raunchy, but you can still see their stuff on YouTube. I think obscene is going to have some kind of a line. Like, you don't want to see a murder live on YouTube. That would be obscene. You don't want to see a rape live on Instagram Live. You don't. And so those would be obscene that you would hope would be taken care of. But I think most people, if you look at it from a common sense standpoint, obviously those things would be taken care of. Other countries take this issue a little further, outlawing social media posts that are determined to be at odds with the official position of the nation's government. That's China. That's exactly what they do. Number 6, cons of censorship. It shifts where the responsibility of consumption is in society. When the government's responsible for what people can access for information, there's no longer any personal accountability for your action. This process cedes control of ethics, morality standards. In other words, they become your nanny. When you allow someone else to determine what's good for you and what's not good for you, they are now your parent, your authority, your nanny. And the last time I checked, when you turn 18, you're officially an adult in the United States of America. You can make your own choices. Why do we need a parent at that point telling us what we can and cannot view on the internet? We don't. Number 7. This is cons of censorship. It creates an adverse impact on the economy at all levels. When censorship starts blocking any form of content because it doesn't meet someone's perspective of what is decent or offends someone, then there are fewer economic opportunities available to all levels of society. Businesses can't promote themselves because it could offend someone. See, I think that's bogus. And it does impact the economy. Like, think about even like what's happened this year, where there's been like censorship of information and people aren't able to access goods and services that they want because that stuff's been, it's such a mess, and it does mess with people's livelihood. Number 8, it allows a false narrative to become the truth. Oh my gosh, think about this for a second. The official narrative that is put out there right now about things, and then you censor a counter argument to that narrative. What are you doing when the original narrative is wrong? You're telling people that false narrative is true when it's not. Are you seeing why it's problematic to be censoring things on the internet? What if we never challenged that saturated fat isn't unhealthy? Think about that one for a second. I did a post about this today on social media. But think about if we didn't hear anything about the good things regarding saturated fat in your diet, what would you do? You'd continue to avoid saturated fat. Why? Because it would be the belief you would have based on the false narrative that saturated fat is going to cause you harm in your health. But people started questioning it, and then that narrative got challenged with studies, got challenged with information, with truth, with real truth that showed what was going on. And now we know better. Number 9, it's expensive to be engaged in the practice of censorship. It cost the public $2 billion in 2015 to prevent specific content from being seen. Cutting connectivity is in just one country could be more than $100 million. China pays $2 billion annually just to keep its firewall in place to keep all the information they want seen intact. Interesting. Number 10, it creates repression so that it encourages compliance. One of the most banned books in the world today is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. What is so remarkable about that fact is that the author is a devout Catholic and a good friend of C.S. Lewis. He once wrote a letter to Lewis saying that his trilogy and The Hobbit were unconsciously written from a Christian perspective at first and then edited consciously to incorporate those themes. Christian churches and schools are the most likely places where you will see these works being banned because they're viewed as anti-Christian. That's why having a singular viewpoint, being in charge of censorship, is dangerous to society. It can be an ill-informed opinion that is completely contrary to the working question, yet the power it has to condemn can influence others. So in this story I'm reading from, the author, by the way, Kevin Miller at futureofworking.com, the verdict on pros and cons of censorship is some people look at the idea of censorship as a way to add common sense restrictions to daily routines so we stay safe and protect children. The other side of that equation is that families can set their own limits, establish rules, circumstances that fit their needs without imposing their morality or beliefs on other people. That's not to say that all forms of content should not be allowed or should be allowed in society. Murder videos, child pornography, similar items that encourage violence against others and promote actual harm is a safety factor we can't ignore. I think we can all agree that those things are common sense, obvious. And if they need to be codified, so be it. But those are obvious things. It's all these other things that have happened in the midst of the coronavirus this year that have not been okay. That's why the crux of the pros and cons of censorship work to distinguish fictional content from factual ones. We don't outlaw murder mystery novels because someone dies in the story. We would outlaw content that showed a murder because a real person was harmed in the process. All right, I've got a couple more here. I'm not going to read the whole thing of these others, but this one here is from learn.g2, how internet censorship affects you. All right, where was I going to go with this one? Let me go right to, here it is. So their pros of censorship: create common sense limits. So that way you don't see so much content on the internet, it can be overwhelming. So it creates limits. You can stop fake news before it happens. So you can cut down the mass amounts of fraudulent information. But again, who gets to determine what's fake and what's real, what's truth and what's false? Who gets to make that decision? That's always the question I keep coming back to when it comes to censorship. Who is allowed to pull that string? Faceless, nameless bureaucrats at the big tech companies right now. They're the ones doing it. Curb access to harmful activities, which we talked about, and less identity theft. Cons of internet censorship: restricts too much information because you should be able to have access to all of it. Who's in charge, how the rules define, or the checks and balances on those people. Internet censorship could quickly turn into a matter of opinion about what's acceptable and what's not. You censor free speech and the cost, which we talked about. And then this last one, let's see if there's anything else in here. Censorship curtails the freedom of the people, or does not curtail the freedom of the people, but protect them. But again, who needs the protection? Like the last time I checked, if you're an adult in America, you're responsible for you. Whatever happened to personal responsibility in America, that we're the final arbiters in what happens to us, and if something bad happens, so be it. Like, that's our choice. It's the whole mask debate right now. If somebody chooses to go to a store and not wear a mask, they're taking that risk. They're being willing to say, okay, I have looked at the risks and benefits of wearing a mask, and I've decided I don't want to wear one, that my risk of having complications from wearing one are a lot greater than the risk potentially of getting COVID-19 through an experience with someone in that same store. So we need to let people have that personal responsibility again, right? Number 2, it can minimize risks in national security, which we talked about. Number 3, it prevents the airing of too much violence, which can pollute the minds of individuals. Again, I think that at a family level, That's where you take care of that situation. You don't let your kids watch a violent movie or violent TV show. You just don't. That's the parent's job, not some nameless, faceless bureaucrat that's censoring information. Number 4, it helps parents rearing their children despite their busy schedules. It's not the job of anybody to rear people's kids except the parents. I'm going to keep coming back to that. Stay out of parenting if you're not the parent of that child. Now, the parent is derelict in their duty of being a parent. That's a whole nother situation altogether. But if they parented those kids and they birthed those kids and they're their kids, let the parents be the parents. Number 5, it prevents certain groups, religious sectors, and people from getting offended. Again, you do not have the right to not be offended. That is no reason to censor just because things are offensive. I find a lot of things I look at every single day online as something, oh my God, I would never look at that. I'm not interested in that. I could be offended by that. But what does it do? It doesn't ruin my day. I just move on. Move on to the next post. So what are the cons here? It overtly deprives the public of information related to political and social issues. This is a big one. Opponents refute the issue that censorship offers protection completely. They say it can be used by powerful and influential people to hide vital information from members of the society that can harm their reputation and reveal wrongdoings. It can. Some politicians and leaders of nations with stringent laws on censorship take advantage of this so as not to expose them from their illegal activities and private affairs. We're seeing that right now with the pedophile ring. You're not hearing a lot about this in the mainstream, but there are a lot of deep, dark, ugly secrets happening with some of the most prominent people in the world of entertainment and politics that have been found to be caught up in pedophilia. And so it's like that's not getting out there a lot, and they don't want the public to know because it could have them distrust the government and distrust people. Okay, well, great. I want to distrust them because they're not trustworthy, right? It's clearly pro-dictatorship when you censor things. Yeah, this is why the United States of America does not have a dictator as its leader. We have a duly elected president of the United States that's the leader, and duly elected representatives in the House of Representatives and the Senate. That's how this system works. If you tell people, well, we're going to censor what you can see and not see, we'll allow you to see that, we want to pull this, then you're a dictatorship. That doesn't fly in America. There are loopholes in the enforcement of censorship which make it ineffective. So various bills and laws that are in place disallow some censorship, but then allows others, and so there's no congruity there. It also keeps people from progress and development because, again, if you don't learn about things from all perspectives, you can't broaden your knowledge base. And this is one of the problems with censorship. Censorship is a powerful tool that can work for or against a society and its people. It can be beneficial in some aspects, but can be potentially harmful if it's used improperly. It can either result to disseminating balanced information, or it can hide the truth about issues that people deserve to know about. Now the burden lies on the shoulders of those people responsible for censoring the information. What is important is for members from both sides of the spectrum, supporters and critics, to continue debating on the issue to achieve a kind of censorship that works for the majority. So I think what we can conclude here today is some censorship is common sense. It's obvious. But what we've seen happening in 2020 is egregious to the worst degree. I think certain people have been censoring information, and again, it's at the big tech companies. They have the monolithic autonomy to be able to just pull anything that they deem as wrong, not true, or offensive, or whatever. Like, they're the ones making that decision. Who chose them? Now, I suppose it's an argument that, okay, well, if you don't like the way Instagram and YouTube and Facebook are running their sites because they're shadow banning, because they're pulling things off that you post and censoring information, maybe you can go to somewhere else. And I can tell you guys, there is a huge move afoot behind the scenes because of this very issue we're talking about here today, that people are getting off of these big boy platforms. Now, I'm still here with Jimmy Rants. I'm going to try to stay here until they ban me someday. I am working on directly putting this show on jimmyrants.com where they can't ban it, they can't censor it. I'm working on the infrastructure with my guys now behind the scenes to try to go live right there from jimmyrants.com, even when the time comes that this censorship becomes real for me. But this is happening. Whether you realize it or not, there are certain things that people just don't want you to see. And they feel it's okay to go ahead and censor things on the internet. And it's been really bad in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic. So let's see what you guys have to say over here on Instagram, then over on Facebook, finally over on YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. Welcome in, welcome in. JimmyRants.com is the website. Grandma does keto. Hey, welcome back. You've been gone a while. Censorship improves what? I just spit my coffee. Exactly. It does not improve much, does it? Hydroxychloroquine used with et cetera, so studies used without it are used to discount it, so cynical and distorted. Yeah, most of the hydroxychloroquine trials, they either gave too much dosage of the hydroxychloroquine, which they find somewhere around 200 is the level, and they were giving them 2,000, which is a toxic level. So of course they're going to have adverse response. Then they don't mix it with zinc and azithromycin. Those three combined together in the proper dosages has been shown in the early days of COVID-19 to actually stem off the disease. Critical thinking, like your immune system, must be exercised or it's lost. Exactly. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let's pop over here now to my Facebook page, see what you guys have to say. What's up, Facebook? Thanks for being here today on Jimmy Rants. Great rant this morning. The right has been mind-boggling. Yes. The censorship has been mind-boggling. I can't believe in the United States we would have that kind of thing going on, but here we are. Judy says, great rant. The conservative right has been censored for years, but what we've seen this year with all the medical issues going on has been mind-boggling. Okay, so you rewrote it. Okay. I was like, wait a minute, I just read that. Yeah, and I mean, there's all kinds of perspectives that are deemed wrong. They're not wrong, they're just different. A different perspective from the mainstream narrative does not make it wrong. A different perspective says, okay, here is your argument, now here's a counter-argument. I mean, look at the Supreme Court of the United States, for example. When there's a ruling, they have a majority opinion, which various justices in the majority ruling can write majority opinions, but then they allow dissenting opinions, meaning there's justices that voted the other direction and they wanted to share their justification for why they voted the way they voted. Why do they do that? They do that so that people could see what the deliberations were like. You have both pro and con to the exact same issue. So we're not seeing that in America. We're just seeing a lot of censorship in 2020. Tracy says, I want to see all the sides and then make my own opinion. I'm 52 and can make up my own mind. I hate it when they treat us like children. It actually makes me angry. Tracy, you are not alone in that. And the last time I checked, once we turn 18, we have to start paying taxes. We have to, adult for the first time in our lives when we turn 18. Some a little bit later than that. They live at home a little longer, but most of us had to get out of the house and start being adults. Well, when we started being adults and we started having responsibilities and obligations and paying taxes, that's the moment that being parented ended. Now, I love my mom, and she's a great mom to me, and we have nice conversations. But by no means does she rule my life in any way. She doesn't. And nor should she. So it's nobody's job to parent you once you're an adult. But you're right. That's exactly what they're doing by censoring this information. All right. Thank you, Facebook. Let me pop over here now to YouTube. Believe what I say and don't question anything, says Shirley. Yes, that is what they're trying to tell us. Abel says censorship is so much more prevalent and dangerous than people even know. Abel, you know. We've seen it firsthand, haven't we? Okay. John's making a point about Fox News being propaganda. Well, there's people on the other side of the issue that would say the same thing about CNN. So, I think Fox and CNN should both have a seat at the table of disseminating information. And then if you want to come to a conclusion after watching both, then so be it. The problem is some people only watch Fox or they only watch CNN and they're not getting both sides of issues. I'm all for, if you want to come to a logical conclusion, to listen to both ends of conversations, and then you can make an informed decision. Otherwise, you're being propagandized. Propagandized is hearing one message and it's just hammered at you all day long, and then suddenly that's your belief. What else are you going to believe if that's all you ever hear? But if you get another side of the issue and you hear a little bit of this, a little bit of that, then you come in the middle and go, I like that part of what they said, but I like that part of what they said, right? And so that's what critical thinking is all about. It's about letting people make those choices based on their own educational knowledge and wisdom and analyzing the situation and not being told what to believe. One group just completely lies, but facts should be facts. It's a false equivalency. Well, I agree facts should be facts, but again, who gets to determine what is true and what is not true? That's part of the issue with this censorship, is who's making the determining factors about what is truth? I agree with you. I think truth is truth, and it's an absolute. Truth is truth. The problem is when you have people defining what they think is true that's not true, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. When you create a false narrative, then that becomes the truth in people's minds because they've been so driven with one singular message that they can't possibly think any other way but that message. So it's a tricky situation. All right, let me come back over here to Instagram. I'm sure you've heard of the list effect, says Joshua. Pretty powerful stuff. This has been happening for a long time. Oh, I'm not pretending like this is brand new. It has been happening for a long time. The problem is 2020 has made this stick out like a sore thumb, because I think all the pretension about all this is completely gone now. They're not even trying to hide the fact that they're censoring anymore. They've been censoring for a while. And let me tell you, in the alternative health space, they started the censorship a year ago, over a year ago. A lot of people don't know this. I did a Jimmy Rants about it at the time, but Google changed their algorithm so that you can't find your favorite alternative health people anymore. A lot of us took a hit in our traffic when they changed an algorithm, and it hit Joe Mercola, it hit the big boy, all of us that have put out alternative health information. That happened in like April last year. And so this is just an extension of what they've already been doing. Do your own research. I even watch foreign press websites. Foreign press is where you get most of the truth these days. Joshua says, I'm tired of hearing new normal 100 times a day. Yeah, I will refuse to believe the new normal is here. So, but guys, censorship, it's real. It's here. Is it doing us any good? And I argue no, it's not. John says it's always dangerous censorship. It's just not being allowed to be heard. And I agree. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me right here on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live in the content. We're here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so be there, be square. We also simulcast over here on Facebook, so thank you guys for being here, and thank you over there on YouTube on the live stream. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed a live, you can watch it on replay right here on IGTV. We also put it up over on YouTube, and don't forget the special bonus episodes I have put up over on my YouTube channel that are interviews from the Living La Vida Low Carb show today. Rebecca Farmer, go listen to that. Finally, pop on over to jimmyrants.com and you can see all the past episodes there. And most importantly, if you like what I do here, you like thought-provoking content, please consider becoming one of my Patreons. Click on that Patreon link. A donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. Some people said, can I give you a one-time donation? There's also a PayPal link at jimmyrants.com. All right, guys, that's it for now. We'll be back again real soon with more Jimmy Rants. Bye.